So, real estate negotiations are super complex. I didn't actually know that. I don't know if you know that I've been selling real estate since I was 21 years old and pretty much, been in real estate most of my life. So it's what I know. But when I started studying negotiations back about 13 years ago, when I started teaching them, I learned that there's a complexity scale that they rate negotiations on. And it turns out that real estate negotiations are actually quite far along the complexity spectrum. And so at the sort of not complex end, you have things like natural resource negotiations. So even though they have big numbers, there's not a lot of variation in the terms and conditions that can happen in those deals. So they're not too complex. And then we're about two-thirds of the way along the spectrum in complexity. And then, sort of over on the really complex end is like trade negotiations and hostage negotiations and stuff that's obviously, more complex than what we're doing. And I thought this was kind of cool because, they felt complex. And so it was really nice to sort of have that acknowledgement. But what is it that makes real estate negotiations complicated, right? We just talked about emotions and the depth of emotions that can come and intermingle in a real estate negotiation. Now, not always, but almost always, emotions are a significant factor in your negotiations around real estate. Other things that make it complex is that we're dealing with a real variable in the amount of business experience that our clients have. Some of the clients we represent have sold many houses or they're quite involved in negotiations in their business, and they approach it in a very different way than somebody who maybe just hasn't had any real business experience at all. And we could have parties that were opposites in terms of that experience, in the same negotiation. And then, of course, we've got the other agent. And I think you guys would all agree that sometimes the other agent can make negotiations unbelievably complex. And it is one of the skills we're going to talk about down the road when we start talking about collaborative negotiations, about how it is that we can deal with an agent who's difficult and complex and getting in the way of a transaction. Other factors that make it complex is that even though it may not have as many zeros as a bunch of natural resources, as a percentage of net worth, it's often a massive amount of money for the people that we're representing. Then we've got all sorts of other factors that it's a complicated legal arrangement. Mortgages, are obviously right now harder to get, more complex. There's more going on in the world of financing. Then we've got social issues like culture and generation. We've got people who view the world differently coming into the same negotiation. So yeah, it's complex. And so what you guys are doing when you're negotiating your transactions for your buyers and sellers is complex. And when you're good at it, you guys are worth every penny you're getting paid.